For 40 years, old Earl Bennett climbed the ladder to his barn loft every single night, lit a single lantern, and set it in the window facing the sea. He never missed a night, not through storms, not through sickness, not through the deepest grief a man can carry. And when the people of Harbor Point asked him why, the old farmer would only look out toward the dark water and say, "I made a promise." Earl's farm sat on a green rise above the coast, where the fields ran down almost to the cliffs, and the salt wind carried in off the ocean every evening. He'd been born on that farm, worked it his whole life, and he knew every inch of its soil. But it wasn't the land that defined Earl Bennett in the eyes of his town. It was that light. That single steady light in the barn window that burned every night from dusk till dawn, year after year, decade after decade, facing out toward the endless gray sea. Most folks in Harbor Point were too young to remember why. The old-timers had a vague notion, but even they couldn't quite recall the whole story. And Earl never explained it. He kept the reason locked away in his heart, the way he kept so many things, and he simply climbed that ladder every night and lit that lantern, a silent ritual that had long since become the strangest and most faithful habit anyone in that little coastal town had ever known. To understand the light, you have to go back 40 years to when Earl was a young man of 35, and his heart was whole and his life was full. Back then, Earl had a younger brother named Sam. The two of them had grown up on that farm together, thick as thieves, and there was nothing in the world Earl loved more than his little brother. But where Earl was rooted to the land, Sam was restless. Sam loved the sea. He'd stand on the cliffs for hours watching the ships pass on the horizon, dreaming of the wide world beyond Harbor Point. And when Sam turned 20, he did what Earl always knew he would. He signed on with a merchant ship and left the farm to sail the oceans of the world. The night before Sam left, the two brothers stood together in the barn loft, looking out the window toward the moonlit sea. Sam was full of excitement and a little bit of fear, and Earl was trying hard not to show how much it broke his heart to see him go. And there, in that loft, the two of them made a promise to each other. Earl told his brother, "No matter how far you sail, no matter how long you're gone, I'll keep a light burning in this window every night, so that if you're ever lost out there, ever afraid, ever wondering if there's a place in this world where you belong, you just look from my light, and you'll know that your brother's here, waiting, and that you can always come home." Sam laughed and called him sentimental, but there were tears in his eyes when he did, and the next morning he was gone. For a few years the letters came, postcards from ports all over the world, full of Sam's wild adventures and his big dreams. Earl kept every one of them in a tin box, and every night, just as he'd promised, he lit the lantern in the barn window facing the sea. Then, one autumn, the letters stopped. Word came the following spring. Sam's ship had gone down in a terrible storm somewhere in the North Atlantic. There were no survivors. His little brother, the boy who had loved the sea, had been swallowed by it, and Earl Bennett's heart broke into pieces that would never fully mend. The whole town expected the light to go out after that. What was the point, they whispered, of a light to guide home a brother who would never come home again? But that night, and every night after, Earl climbed the ladder and lit the lantern just the same. Because the way Earl saw it, a promise didn't end just because the person you made it to was gone. He'd told Sam he would always keep the light burning, and so he would, for as long as he drew breath. A light for a lost brother, shining out across the dark water that had taken him. The years passed. Earl married a good woman named Helen, and she understood about the light and never once asked him to stop.
They grew old together on the farm, and when Helen passed away, the light kept burning through Earl's second great grief, just as it had through his first. He was alone again now, an old man of 75, but every single night, without fail, that lantern glowed in the barn window facing the sea. 40 years, 14,600 nights, a promise kept long past all reason, long past all hope. And then, on a wild and stormy night in late autumn, someone knocked on Earl Bennet's door. The old man was surprised to hear it. Nobody came calling on a night like that, with the rain lashing sideways and the wind howling in off the sea. He shuffled to the door and opened it, and there on his porch stood a stranger, a weathered man, perhaps in his early 60s, soaked to the bone in a sailor's raincoat, his face lined and browned by a lifetime of sun and salt. The man stared at Earl for a long moment, his eyes filling with tears, and when he finally spoke, his voice shook. "Are you Earl Bennet, brother of Sam Bennet?" Earl's heart nearly stopped. "I am," he managed to say, "but my brother's been dead these 40 years." The stranger's face crumpled, and he reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in oilcloth. With trembling hands, he unwrapped it and held it out. It was an old, faded photograph, a picture of two young brothers standing in a barn loft, laughing, the sea behind them through the window. Earl knew it at once. It was a copy of a photo Sam had carried with him when he left. "My name is Thomas, and I have a story to tell you that I have waited my whole life to tell." Earl brought the man inside, sat him down by the fire, and Thomas told him everything. Sam had not died alone in that storm all those years ago. When his ship went down, Sam had survived, clinging to a piece of wreckage in the freezing black water, and clinging beside him was a terrified young cabin boy, barely 14 years old, on his first voyage, a boy named Thomas. Through that endless, horrifying night, as they drifted in the dark ocean, Sam had kept the boy alive. He'd held him up when his strength failed, talked to him to keep him awake, and told him stories to keep the terror at bay. And the story Sam told over and over through that longest of nights was about a light his brother kept burning in a barn window, far away, on a green farm above the sea. "There's always a light waiting for you somewhere," Sam had told the boy. "You just have to hold on long enough to find it. My brother's keeping one burning right now. Somewhere out there, my brother's light is shining. Hold on, and one day you'll find your way to it." Near dawn, a passing ship had spotted them, but it could only reach one. Sam, half frozen and near the end of his own strength, had used the last of himself to push the boy toward the rescuers. Thomas was pulled from the water. Sam was not. The sea took him at last, but he had given his own life to save the boy beside him. "I lived," Thomas said, weeping now, "because your brother chose to die. And for 40 years I've carried his story with me and his words about the light across every ocean in the world. I became a sailor because of him. I lived a whole life because of him. And I made a promise to myself all those years ago that before I died, I would find the farm with the light in the window, the light Sam swore was burning for him, and I would tell his brother what kind of man Sam Bennet truly was." Thomas looked up, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I've searched for years, Earl, and tonight, sailing past this coast in the storm, I saw it. A single light in a barn window facing the sea. After 40 years, I finally found your light." Earl Bennet and the stranger his brother had saved sat by the fire until dawn, weeping and laughing and sharing the memory of a good man lost to the sea. And when the morning came at last, and the storm had blown itself out, the two of them climbed the ladder to the barn loft together and stood at the window, looking out at the calm and shining water. "All these years," Earl said quietly, "I thought I was keeping that light for a brother who could never come home. And all these years, it turns out, my light really was guiding someone home across the sea, just not the someone I expected." Thomas stayed in Harbor Point after that. He had no family of his own left, and Earl had no one either, so the two of them became a kind of family, bound together by the memory of the man who had joined their lives across 40 years and 1,000 miles of ocean. Word of the story spread through the little town, and it moved every soul who heard it to tears. The strange old light that had burned so faithfully for so long was a mystery no more, and now the whole town understood that it had never been foolish at all. Earl kept lighting that lantern every night for the rest of his days, and when he grew too old to climb the ladder, Thomas climbed it for him. And when Earl finally passed away, peaceful and no longer alone, Thomas kept the light burning still, a promise passed